The next one is in fact NetEase, which is not a company I was particularly familiar with before doing the preparation for the show. Based in Beijing, although founded by a guy called William Ding, who came from Guangzhou, and he obviously moved his operations up to the capital. They publish a game called Fantasy Westward Journey, which is based like on a Ming Dynasty 16th century book about a Buddhist monk who travels to the west of China, not to the west. $35 billion. Price to earnings ratio of 30.4, dividend yield 1.32%. $35 billion worth of market cap for a company established 20 years ago.
Yes, unbelievable. And another one of these stories of a new industry, a disruptive industry that has captured people's attention, captured a piece of their wallet, and therefore grown very quickly.
Yeah,
now, in the case of NetEase, in the last, say, year to date, it hasn't done quite as well as some of the other companies if you look at the share price. It is listed in New York as well. And the reason for that is it's a lull in the releases for this last quarter of 2017. So they released Minecraft, the game that's owned by Microsoft, but they licensed them to the likes of NetEase. And it's been okay, but also Fantasy Westward Journey, as well as Onmoji, which is the big one in Japan, have not quite done as well, and there's been a delay in the release of the latest versions. So this shows the risk of these companies, where if you don't have the blockbusters rolling off the production line every few weeks, you have a lull in earnings, and then the market's high expectations gets discounted in a much lower share price, unfortunately.
So is this one like a mini Tencent? Because they're not just about the game. They also have sort of a chat thing that they have. They have various e-commerce ventures where you can do things in addition to just simply play in the gaming environment.
Yes, you might want to call it a poor man's Tencent if you want. They don't have the Weixin, a big network, dominant network. Yeah, and for people who might not know Weixin, think about your Android phone, the actual Android operating system, or the iOS operating system on your Apple. Now, if you're in China, you've got a Tencent, a Weixin almost operating system ecosystem. So
you
they
put
don't
your
have
card details in, and it
yes,
just
and it's
connects
connected
all
to
of your
everything.
apps basically run inside of that platform.
Correct. So NetEase, the e-commerce operation, Kaola, is a more high-end e-commerce platform, which has its niche. So it does compete against the likes of Alibaba and Tencent's JD.com investment. And a lot of people see that as diluting the margin. So they've been negative on the e-commerce growth in NetEase, but actually if you disaggregate the gaming business in NetEase versus the e-commerce and other businesses, it looks great. And until the beginning of this year, the historical growth in earnings and share price performance of NetEase has actually been slightly above Tencent, believe it or not.
So you obviously like this one. How long have you owned it? Where did you find out about it? And are you as confident about this one as any of the others?
So I own it since the beginning of the year. So unfortunately, my timing was impeccable in terms of just when it started to underperform. But I've been reading about it the last 2 years as I looked for other companies in a similar industry than Tencent and found NetEase. So I still like the company.
Because the price earnings ratio is much more reasonable here. I see that it's showing up here as 30.4, but on the chart that we looked a moment ago, it said 18.53. So that must be some difference.
I think that's the forward PE is the lower, the 18.5.
So you're hot on this one too?
I am. Like I said, I bought maybe at the wrong time, but if you look at the long-term structure of the whole industry and the fact that NetEase specifically, people might be looking at consolidated results rather than disaggregating and penalizing them for the e-commerce. If I adjust for that, I see a lot of value, and even more value than some of the others.
How many millions of people play this Westward Ho game?
Oh my goodness, it's a few hundred million.
What I want to get the sense of is that it's the number 2 or 3 or whatever, but it's certainly not a tiny company. No. This one is big, established, and it's got a big enough audience that if it does bring these new titles to book, it's going to be able to get the uplift associated with that.
Yes, very often, every month or so, one can look at the app rankings of the iOS store versus the Google Play Store, and most of the time, if you look at the top 10 downloads of games, it's Tencent and NetEase in that top 10 that make up, say, 7 of the top 10. Now, that's a quick point to touch on, and that is that these two big stores, the iOS Apple Store and the Play Store, are two gatekeepers when it comes to the more Western global expansion of these companies, where if you are in China and you go directly to the download link of getting these games, the companies get all the revenue. If you go through your Android or iOS phone, you need to pay a certain toll, if you want to call it, to Apple. So that has made it a bit more difficult for them to grow outside of China into other countries, but they are doing it.
But who cares? They're 1.3 billion Chinese, and all of them are getting a little bit more spending power incrementally every year. Okay, so we're hot on this one.